From wish to achievement, the Stoic strategy, self-motivation. You were told to wish big. They said dreams were enough. They said if you just believed, if you kept it in your heart, the world would somehow notice. That if you wrote it down, stuck it on a wall, said it every morning in the mirror, it would come true. They said picture it, feel it, want it, and you did, over and over again. Late nights with headphones in, watching another motivational clip, nodding, whispering, yes, that's me. That's who I'm going to be. You replayed the same words over and over until they felt like your own. You visualized until the images blurred. You told yourself it was coming, that it was near, that it was only a matter of time. But days passed, then months, then years, and life stayed the same. The routine stayed. The confusion stayed. The same four walls, the same heavy mornings, the same scrolling at midnight, looking for something that finally clicks. And deep down, you wondered quietly at first, why does it still feel so far away? Why do the days blur together? Why do the alarms keep getting snoozed? Why do the people who talk the loudest about growth often move the slowest? Because they never told you the truth. They never told you that wishing is easy. That belief alone is comfortable. That dreaming doesn't cost anything until it starts to replace doing. That every hour spent planning without motion is a quiet trade you make. A trade of action for illusion. They sold you inspiration like candy, and you bought it. Because everyone did. Because it sounded beautiful. Because it felt good to believe in the someday. But here's the part they left out. Nothing changes until you do. And that's where the real story begins. If you're tired of waiting, if you're done pretending, if you're ready to stop talking about potential and start becoming proof, then stay. Because this isn't about dreams anymore. This is about war. The one between who you are and who you were supposed to become. And it starts now. If you're still listening, comment, "I'm done wishing," and then prove it. He always thought he was meant for more. From a young age, people told him he was smart, sharp, different. The kind of person who would go far if he just kept his focus. He heard it so many times it started to feel like a promise. And maybe that's what made it worse. Because promises come with expectations, and expectations turn heavy when the results don't show up. He had ideas, always, big ones. Business plans, books, projects. He wrote them all down, every single night. Leather-bound journals stacked beside his bed, pages filled with bold words like freedom, purpose, legacy. He told himself he was preparing, that all of this thinking, all of this planning was the necessary stage before the breakthrough. But his mornings told a different story. Every day started the same. The alarm went off. He hit snooze, told himself he needed 10 more minutes, just 10, then maybe 20. The sun would rise and pour through the window, but he stayed still, phone in hand. Notifications, messages, distractions, time slipping without resistance. He called it a slow start, told himself it was okay, that he was just taking it easy, that clarity would come later. But clarity didn't come. Neither did progress. He had a job, something simple, repetitive. It paid just enough to cover rent and takeout. He called it temporary, even though it had been 2 years. He told people he was working on a side hustle, told them he was building something behind the scenes, told them he just needed a little more time. But when he got home, the only thing that got built was the list of things he hadn't started. He stayed up late, of course. That's when the ideas flowed best, or so he said. That's when he'd open the journal, flip to a blank page and start writing again. Dreams, goals, plans, always in future tense. Always someday. The handwriting was beautiful. The execution was missing. He followed all the right pages, liked all the quotes, shared posts about growth, mindset, legacy. He watched the interviews, the podcasts, the speeches. He repeated the lines. Discipline is everything. Grind in silence. Don't stop when you're tired. Stop when you're done. He knew the language. He knew how to sound serious. But the hours didn't lie. There were no deep work sessions, no focus blocks, no sacrifices, only plans, only promises. He told himself the world just hadn't seen him yet, that once the timing was right, he'd show them all. But the truth? The world hadn't seen him because he hadn't moved. And this is where you come in, because maybe you know someone like that, or maybe that someone is you. Maybe you've got the same journal, the same goals, the same playlists, the same saved reels, the same YouTube videos that tell you anything is possible. Mm. But when the motivation wears off, when the screen goes dark, you're still sitting there, knowing you could do more, knowing you should be further, and wondering what's missing. You've got ambition, you've got hunger, you've got drive, but you've confused wishing with working, and it's cost you more than you realize. He didn't notice when it started. Not exactly. It wasn't one big fall, no crash, no breaking point, no one moment he could point to and say, "That's when I gave up." It was quieter than that. Slower. It came in pieces, in little choices that didn't feel like choices, in decisions that looked like nothing but added up to everything. The alarm would ring, he'd let it ring, silence it without even opening his eyes. 5 more minutes, he'd think. Sometimes he got them. Sometimes he slept past noon. He called it rest, said he needed a reset, said his brain was tired. He had read somewhere that productivity starts with peace. So he clung to that, used it like a shield against the guilt building inside him. There were lists, so many lists, to-dos, reminders, digital planners, bullet points with stars beside them. He'd look at them, feel the rush of purpose, then close the app. He'd light a candle, open his laptop, type a title, then get up to make coffee, or check a message, or reply to a comment. 10 minutes would pass, then 30. Then the day would go. The tasks stayed half finished, tabs left open, notebooks abandoned mid-page. He said the timing wasn't right. He needed more clarity. The idea wasn't fully formed yet. He'd start Monday, maybe the next one, maybe next month. He didn't want to rush the process. He wanted to get it right. But that wasn't truth. That was fear. And every day he told himself, later, a part of him started to die. The Stoics knew this, long before smartphones, long before fake urgency and distraction on demand. Seneca said, "It is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it." And he was right. The clock was always moving, but not forward. For him, it was bleeding backward, because he wasn't stuck. He wasn't lost. He was retreating. Every time he said tomorrow, time took something from him. A little focus, a little fire, a little belief. The days blurred because he was erasing them, not living them. He thought he had time, thought he could delay without damage. But time doesn't wait, and it doesn't forgive. He kept telling himself he was just in a rut, that he just needed one good stretch, one wave of motivation, one clear sign from the universe. But the universe had already spoken. It spoke in the silence of unfinished projects, in the dust on his dreams, in the ache behind his eyes every night he laid in bed, wondering where the time had gone. He told himself he was patient, but patience without action isn't strength, it's surrender. This wasn't a slump. It was slow self-betrayal, the kind that doesn't look dangerous until years are gone, the kind that doesn't feel like pain, but steals your future just the same. And he knew it. Deep down, he knew it. You could see it in his eyes, not panic, not despair, something worse, acceptance. He was becoming okay with less, okay with almost, okay with someday, but someday never comes, not unless you bring it. And that was the part he hadn't faced yet, but it was coming. It was late. He couldn't sleep. Again. The same heavy feeling sat on his chest, the kind that comes when the mind won't quiet and the hours feel wasted. He scrolled like always, chasing something he couldn't name. Articles, quotes, short clips about success, mindset, winning. All of them started sounding the same, until one line caught him. It wasn't loud. It wasn't flashy, just a quiet post with old words and a plain background. But it stopped him. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. He didn't scroll past. He read it again. And again. The name below it, Marcus Aurelius. He'd heard the name before. Something Roman. Something ancient. He didn't think much of it, but the words stuck. They felt sharp, too sharp to ignore. It was different from the other quotes. Not encouraging, not gentle, just a cold fact. He looked it up, found more lines, found the book Meditations, no chapters, no structure, just thoughts. From a man who ruled an empire, writing quietly to himself. No audience, no claps, just honesty. And that line kept echoing. You could leave life right now. It didn't scare him. It snapped something awake. He'd been walking like he had time, talking like he had time, delaying as if there were guarantees. But there weren't, and he knew it. He always knew it. He just didn't want to look at it directly. But that night, he did. He started thinking about everything he hadn't done, everything he'd put off for the right moment. He thought about the notes on his phone, the folders on his laptop, the drafts that never got posted, all the promises, all the plans. Waiting. For what? He sat in the dark for a long time. No music, no background noise, just him and the thought that death was real and close and never asked for permission. And that's when something started to shift. Not all at once, not with a sudden burst of energy, but something in his eyes changed. He started looking at the hours different, at the small choices, at the way he let his days collapse into each other. He thought about the last 10 years, what he had to show for them, how many of those years were filled with ideas, and how few were filled with proof. He thought about how many days he gave away just because he assumed he'd get more. But what if he didn't? What if this was it? And the question came hard, clear, cold. If death is guaranteed, what exactly are you waiting for? He couldn't answer it. Not that night, not completely, but he didn't need to. The weight of the question was enough to sit him upright, enough to make him close his laptop with purpose instead of regret. Enough to make him see his own hands again, not as tools of delay, but tools of change. It was the first time he didn't feel sorry for himself. The first time he stopped blaming the system, the noise, the past. The first time he saw his own reflection and didn't look away. He didn't call it motivation. He didn't call it purpose. He called it what it was: urgency. And once you feel it, you can't unfeel it. Because once you understand that this ends, you finally understand how to begin. He started waking up early. Not at sunrise, not like the book said. Just earlier than before. Earlier than his excuses. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't cinematic. The alarm still hurt. His body still resisted. But he got up. He sat in the quiet. No phone, no noise. Just breathe. Thought. Pen on paper. He began writing what he wanted. Not what he hoped for. Not what might happen someday. But what he would earn. What he would become. It felt good at first. A clean slate. He told himself this was the shift. This was the version of himself he'd been waiting for. But it didn't last. By day 3, the cracks showed. He missed a writing session. Then 2. Told himself he was tired, that his brain needed space, that he was recharging. He meditated in the morning, but scrolled in the afternoon. He set goals in the journal, but chased comfort by evening. Dopamine came cheap, and he kept buying. There was one night midweek he sat in front of the TV for 5 straight hours, not watching anything, just skipping through options, frozen, paralyzed by 100 choices and the weight of doing nothing with any of them. Afterward, he stood up slowly. He didn't feel rested. He felt foggy, ashamed, empty. The next day, he tried again. He told himself setbacks were normal, that the real path to growth was messy, but somewhere underneath, a whisper grew louder. Maybe you're just not built for this. Maybe this version of you, the focused one, the disciplined one, the finished one thing kind of person, maybe that's a lie you like to believe. He didn't want to admit it, but this new life hurt. It hurt to be awake when everyone else slept. It hurt to say no to things he once said yes to without thinking. It hurt to sit with hard thoughts instead of avoiding them with entertainment. He wanted to be proud. He wanted progress. But the path didn't feel like power. It felt like pain. And that's when he realized something he'd never said out loud. Discipline feels like death. Not death in the body, death in the identity. It's the death of the weak self, the part of you that only acts when it feels good, the version of you that needs a perfect mood, a perfect setup, a perfect reason. That version was dying, and it wasn't going quietly. It screamed in cravings. It begged through distractions. It tried to bargain with just this once. But he saw it now. He saw the game. Every time he opened a new tab, or reached for his phone, or sat a little too long in comfort, he saw the weak self trying to live again, trying to drag him back. And the war wasn't won in big battles. It was won in the boring minutes, in the lonely mornings, in the seconds between urge and action. This wasn't a glow-up. This wasn't about feeling good. This was a storm, inside his head, inside his body, inside his habits. He had to kill something to build something. That's what no one tells you. You don't become great by addition. You become great by subtraction, by cutting away the parts of yourself that keep you small, that lie, that delay, that rationalize. And every time he said no to that voice, every time he stayed uncomfortable, he buried the weaker self just a little deeper. It wasn't over, not even close, but for the first time in years, he wasn't just wishing for change. He was bleeding for it. He hit the floor quietly, no crash, no big scene, just silence. That's how it really happens. It was late again. No food in the fridge. Rent overdue. A message from the landlord blinking red. He hadn't spoken to anyone in days. Not really. A few likes here and there, a comment under a clip, but nothing human. Nothing that made him feel real. He sat there, legs crossed on the floor, back against a cold wall, a notebook open, a page half filled. The pen rolled off and stopped at his side. His eyes burned from too much screen time. His head ached from everything and nothing. He whispered the question before he even knew it left his mouth. Why can't I change? He said it like a confession, like a man tired of lying to himself. He wasn't angry. He wasn't loud. He was just tired of chasing, of failing, of being so close to something that never came. He looked around the room, boxes from last year's move still unpacked, a stack of books with bookmarks in the first 30 pages, a vision board taped to the back of the door, edges curling, dreams fading, dust collecting. He reached for his old laptop. Battery barely held a charge now, but it flickered on. A folder marked "Someday." Inside, an audio file, one he'd forgotten about. He hit play. It was his voice, but not the one he had now. It was younger, clearer, faster, like someone who still believed everything was possible. The voice spoke with confidence, with fire. I want to build something that matters. I want to wake up early and earn my name. I want to be the person I admire instead of watching them from behind a screen. I don't want to scroll through life, I want to fight for it. The file ended. No applause, no music. Just silence again. But a different kind of silence. The kind that comes after a storm. When you've survived something, even if you're not sure how. He sat still. He let that voice echo. The voice from the version of him that hadn't yet been beaten down. The one that hadn't yet made so many promises to himself and broken all of them. He remembered that guy, and he realized something brutal. He hadn't just let himself down. He'd abandoned that version of himself, left him to rot somewhere under the weight of years, excuses, delays. He put the laptop aside, picked up the notebook, wrote one line, "You will answer to that version of you." And then, like a second blow, another line came to him. A quote, one he had read but never truly felt until now. If it is endurable, then endure it. Stop complaining. Marcus Aurelius again, the emperor who'd lost his children, faced plague, betrayal, war, and never played victim. Alex read it 3 times, and it hit harder than any motivational speech, any strategy, any perfect plan, because it stripped away the noise, the stories, the drama. It gave him one command: endure it. No guarantee of reward, no promise of success, just the truth. If you are still breathing, you can endure. If you can endure, you must. That night he didn't feel powerful, but he did feel awake. And that was more than he could say for most nights of his life. He didn't rewrite his goals. He didn't map out his year. He just cleaned his space, put things where they belonged, folded his clothes, threw out the junk food, charged his phone away from the bed, closed every open tab. Not because he felt like it, but because that old version of him, the one in the recording, was watching now. And that was enough to begin. Again. For real this time. He didn't write a plan. He made a decision. No more wish lists. No more vision boards taped to the back of doors and ignored. No more writing goals he never meant to chase. No more talking like change was just one more journal entry away. He had crossed a line now. Quietly. Alone. Without ceremony. He didn't need clarity. He needed action. He didn't need motivation. He needed motion. He took his phone and deleted every app that kept him comfortable. The ones that soaked up hours in exchange for nothing, no audience, no return, no growth, just noise. He didn't post a goodbye, didn't explain, just deleted. He stared at the screen for a second after. It looked emptier now, and so did he. But inside that silence, something unfamiliar started growing. Something that didn't ask for applause, something that didn't care about dopamine. He didn't have a name for it, but it felt like control. That next morning he got out of bed and didn't reach for the phone. He walked straight to the bathroom and turned the shower dial all the way down. No warm-up, no warning, just shock. The cold hit like punishment, but he stood still, breathed through it, didn't escape. Let the water strip him of sleep, of comfort, of the easy life he'd lived too long. He stepped out shivering, but alive in a way he hadn't been in years. He didn't dry off right away. He just looked at himself in the mirror. Wet, raw, awake. The man in the glass wasn't a dreamer anymore. He threw on clothes, the same ones he wore yesterday. Didn't matter. He had work to do. He ran first, not to hit a number, not to beat a time, just to feel the burn in his legs, the weight of effort. The voice in his head begged him to slow down, said it was enough, said he earned rest, but he ignored it. Every step was a reminder. Pain is a teacher, and he'd skipped too many lessons. Then he tried again. He reopened the folder on his laptop marked Ideas, dozens of half-finished projects, online stores, content plans, business models, all with notes like revise later, or needs clarity, or almost ready. None of them had seen the light of day. None had made a single dollar. But today he picked one. Didn't matter which. The point wasn't perfection, it was proof. He spent 3 hours building the basic version. No polish, no branding, just something that worked. It didn't launch right. The link broke. The layout looked awful on mobile. The first test user gave up. Nothing went smooth, but he didn't quit. He didn't slam the laptop shut like before. He didn't say maybe tomorrow. He sat with the frustration, took notes, made fixes, kept going. He didn't smile, didn't celebrate, just kept building. This wasn't fun. It wasn't exciting. It was gritty, repetitive, humbling. But for the first time, he wasn't chasing the high. He was chasing the process. That night, he didn't write down a dream. He blocked out time on the calendar, scheduled execution, tasks, deadlines, not fantasies, commitments. And when he lay down, he didn't feel finished. He didn't feel successful, but he did feel different because there was no part of him that wanted to go back, wasn't waiting anymore. He was working. He learned quickly that the old way wishing and hoping was a trap. So he began to look at things differently, not with dreams, but with clear eyes, the Stoic way. First, he realized one thing was always true. You only control your actions, your choices, your effort, not the results, not the opinions of others, not the world's chaos. He stopped wasting energy on things outside his reach. Instead, he focused on what he could do every small step, every task he could control, no matter how small. When things went wrong, and they did, he didn't break down or run away. He remembered a simple truth. The obstacle is the way. Every challenge wasn't a stop sign, but a signal. Something to use, to fuel his climb higher, not a reason to quit. Problems weren't enemies. They were tools. He learned to face them, work through them, and find strength in resistance. He began to practice voluntary discomfort. Cold showers in the morning weren't punishment anymore, but training. Fasting, waking early, turning off the phone for hours. These were small battles where he tested his mind's limits. Every time he chose discomfort on purpose, he made the real struggles easier. He built resilience, step by step, like a muscle. He also learned to imagine the worst, to picture failure, loss, rejection. Instead of fearing those things, he accepted they could happen. He saw what life looked like at its lowest points, over and over. This wasn't pessimism, it was freedom. When you face the worst in your mind, real fear loses its power. You stop freezing, you start moving. This was the Stoic strategy unfolding a way to stop wishing and start achieving. It wasn't easy, it wasn't quick, but it was real. And it gave him something no motivation video ever could have: foundation. Solid, unshakable, ready for whatever came next. Slowly, day by day, he built new habits. They weren't flashy or exciting at first, just simple things done again and again, without fail. He started waking up before the sun. No alarms to hit snooze on, no excuses to stay in bed. The mornings became his time, quiet, empty, full of potential. Before the world demanded anything from him, he gave himself a chance to prepare. Every night he wrote, not random thoughts or empty wishes. He used Stoic prompts, questions that made him reflect on what went well, what went wrong, what he could control, and what he needed to accept. He faced himself honestly on paper. No sugarcoating, no pretending, just truth. He tried something that terrified him: rejection therapy. It meant saying no to comfort, asking for things he feared hearing no to, putting himself in situations where failure wasn't just possible, it was expected. And each time, he learned it didn't break him. It made him stronger, more confident, less afraid. Exercise became a ritual, not just for the body but for the mind. The burn in his muscles reminded him he was alive and fighting. He worked on skills too, grinding away at things that mattered: writing, building, learning small steps that added up over time. His body changed, first standing taller, walking with purpose, eyes sharper, energy clearer. But more than that, something shifted inside: a quiet confidence, a focus that didn't waver. The old Alex, uncertain, stuck, waiting, was fading. Because what you do every day isn't just a habit, it becomes you, permanently. It shapes your thoughts, your actions, your future. He wasn't just chasing a dream anymore. He was becoming the person who could make that dream real. The world didn't cheer, it didn't notice. Friends laughed behind his back, calling him crazy for changing his ways, for waking up so early, for giving up old habits. They said it wouldn't last, that he was wasting time, that comfort was better than struggle. His parents asked questions loaded with doubt, their voices filled with worry masked as concern. Why can't you just be happy with what you have? They said. Why risk so much for something uncertain? Nothing went viral. No overnight success. No flood of likes or shares. The quiet grind didn't make headlines. The inbox stayed empty. The applause never came. But inside Alex, something else was happening. The noise outside no longer shook him. The doubt no longer echoed in his mind. The hunger to be seen, to be praised, to be understood. Those needs had started to fade. He learned the hard way that you don't rise when the world supports you. You rise when you've stopped needing its permission, when your progress doesn't depend on applause or approval, when your worth is not tied to recognition. That shift, this inner independence, was his real breakthrough. He built his foundation not on external validation, but on self-respect and discipline. And with that, he moved forward, no longer waiting for the world to catch up or give him a sign. Because true strength isn't given, it's claimed. And he was done asking. After months of relentless effort, Alex finally crossed a line. It wasn't a moment of fame or a sudden breakthrough that changed everything overnight. Instead, it was quieter, steady, earned through grit and persistence. He completed his first real goal, launching a product he had built from scratch, something tangible that carried his effort, his late nights, and his early mornings. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't a bestseller. It didn't make headlines or bring instant wealth, but it was his, real, concrete, proof that change was possible. He took a moment to feel it, not the rush of applause, because there was none. Instead, he measured success by a different standard, by integrity, by whether he showed up for himself day after day, no matter what the world thought. This achievement wasn't about impressing others. It was about honoring the promise he made to himself to keep going, to do the hard work, to be consistent even when no one was watching. And in that quiet victory, Alex found something stronger than fame or fortune, a foundation built on truth and discipline, one he could rely on no matter what came next. As Alex moved forward, something shifted again. The journey that had once felt so lonely began to reach beyond himself. He found someone else, someone stuck in the same place he had been not long ago. But he didn't take on the role of a distant teacher or a perfect guru. Instead, he became a mirror, showing not just words but the raw, lived experience of struggle and growth. He shared the same Stoic truths that had saved him, not as empty phrases, but as lessons carved into his daily life. Control what you can, turn obstacles into fuel, embrace discomfort, face the worst without fear. But more than teaching, he showed, he lived it openly, without pretense, because he understood something deeper now. People don't change because they hear speeches or watch motivational videos. They change because they see someone who walks the hard path, who stumbles, who fights, and keeps moving forward anyway. That's how motivation spreads, not through promises, but through embodiment. The quiet example that says, if I can do this, so can you. And in this new role, Alex found a purpose beyond his own success, helping others see the way from wish to achievement, one steady step at a time. And so, Alex walks forward not towards some distant, perfect finish line, but into the ongoing challenge of becoming. Rain mixes with sweat on his skin, each drop a reminder of the effort, the struggle, the growth. His steps are steady, filled with purpose, carrying the weight of all he's learned. This isn't about luck or waiting for the right moment. It's not about wishing for change or hoping someone else will make it happen for you. It's about deciding right now to stop wishing, stop watching from the sidelines, stop waiting for permission. It's about becoming the person who moves despite fear, who acts despite doubt, who builds when the world doubts him most. Because the truth is clear and simple. The more we value things outside our control, approval, success, applause, the less control we truly have. Remember the words of Epictetus. Just keep in mind, the more we value things outside our control, the less control we have. The power to change, to achieve, to become is already inside you. It's time to take it. If something moved in you today, something honest, something raw, something quietly urgent, don't brush it aside. Don't let it fade just because life gets noisy again. Don't let this moment slip back into the background, into the place where forgotten dreams live. You felt it for a reason. You're not just supposed to be inspired. You're supposed to be changed. You have a choice now. Let this be another thing you felt deeply and did nothing about, or let it become the line you drew in the sand, the moment you stopped waiting and started showing up. Not perfectly, not loudly, just fully. So speak it. What is the wish you've kept inside? Say it out loud. Write it down. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And then ask yourself, what's the very first thing you can do to turn that wish into a real, living direction? Not a goal for someday, a direction for today. There's something powerful about saying it out loud. It's not just a comment. It's a declaration. It's a shift, a first brick laid on the road to becoming. So comment, not to impress, to commit. What wish are you turning into action? And if you need reminders like this, steady anchors to help you keep moving forward, subscribe. Because mental strength isn't a one-time moment. It's a weekly practice, a conversation you keep having with yourself. The more you hear it, the more you live it. If this helped clear something up inside you or shake something loose that's been stuck, share it. Not for views, for impact. Someone else might be standing where you stood. lost in the noise, drowning in the waiting. One spark from you might light their way, because the future you want is not coming out of nowhere. It's coming out of you. Your effort, your honesty, your willingness to stop drifting and start shaping. Your future is not written by fate, it's forged by fire. Light the match,